Hello, everyone. Welcome to this retreat course welcome webinar. As you know, the retreat course starts on March 15th and will be available on Vajrayana Online. And today's webinar is to answer your questions about the course and introduce you to the structure of the course with Lucas and Kasumi. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Kasumi.
Thank you, Luis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Along with Lucas, we will be sharing some content about retreat course. And particularly today, for 1 hour we have together, first we would like to share, our personal experiences with retreats, and then also we'll touch on some time with the Q&A. And finally, we would like to explain what this retreat course is about and what you can expect from that. So we are really excited to be able to talk about retreat, particularly personal retreats. And so just so you know, any questions, comments, doubts that you might have about this, all is welcome. So as you are listening to us, if you have any questions that are coming up in your mind, please feel free to keep a note of that. We'll have Q&A time together, so hopefully we can address that, all those questions or doubts you might have. So we also have planned some time to start with guided meditation. So I'll welcome Lucas.
Thank you, Kasumi. Hi, everyone. As Kasumi said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where we are in the world. So we thought we'd just start with a short sitting practice, just set the stage, something that we often do in Tergar. It's just very nice when you get into a meeting like this. And it's very in line with the topic as well, doing a retreat, which is, of course, very focused on formal practice. So why don't we all just get into a seated position, keeping our spines loosely straight. Maybe you just want to take a deep breath or so and exhale just to relax. So just breathe in, hold it for a second or two, and then just let be there. Just let go of the rest of our days right now, just focusing on this time we're having together. When we sit like this, we actually don't need to do much. It's something we call open awareness. Can just simply be very natural, just recognizing this knowing quality of the mind, that we know we're here, we know we're seeing our screens, or you know that you're hearing my voice, and that's it. We just embrace this moment with this gentle touch of awareness. And from time to time, we get lost in thoughts or emotions. And we can just gently bring the mind back, the awareness back, just relax again. Okay, so as I said, this was just a very, very short practice, and this is something we will do more of in the course itself with our guided practice sessions. So with that, I think I hand it back to you, Kasumi. hear a little bit about your experience with retreat.
Thank you, Lucas, for the beautiful practice. So yeah, Lucas and I were thinking that it would be really nice just to just share our experiences when it comes to personal retreat. Maybe you can let go of the slide for a few moments here. We'll get to Q&A. Great, thank you. Yeah, so for me, when I first encountered Tergar community, it was back in 2011. And you might have heard Mingyur Rinpoche going for 4.5 years of his wandering retreat. And at that time, when I first discovered the Joy of Living practice group in Madison, Wisconsin, in the United States, Mingyur Rinpoche had already left for his personal retreat, meaning we didn't know when he will come back. And only thing I heard is like he's somewhere in the Himalaya mountains and, going to different caves and meditate. And that had so much impact on me. I felt so inspired by him being like wandering yogi, going, to place without anything. And often I started, meditating within the Tergar community, and then I would be complaining about how the cushion is so uncomfortable, and then like somehow like environment is not so right. And then I think to myself like, wait a second, Mingyur Rinpoche only has a rock to meditate on, sitting on a rock somewhere in the cold, harsh climate. So, Mingyur Rinpoche has been definitely, a huge inspiration for me as I began even, learning about personal retreat. And not only Mingyur Rinpoche, but also, we were so fortunate to have other Tergar guides, Tim, Myoshin, Edwin, Court, and Antonia, and other friends, facilitators. They all had some experiences with personal retreats. And in fact, one of the first retreat cabins that I did, outside my home environment, was exactly the cabin that Tim and Myoshin had done a personal retreat. So I had some like really personal sort of inspiration from others, who are around me as well. So, inspiration was definitely there. At the same time, we all are household yogi, meaning that we are not full-time meditators in a sense that others traditionally speaking have luxury, and we have family, we have job, we have responsibilities, difficulties arise in our lives. And so for me, it really was also working with how I prepare myself for like just taking the first step into a personal retreat. So that was also really important for me to like just work within my own capacity and then build upon some confidence, whether it's like, start with a shorter length and then gradually, make it longer and longer, or whether it's like, I would just do at home, just half day or even a few hours, half day, that becomes a day, that becomes a weekend, that becomes a 1 week. So from like, home, comfortable environment to like, going somewhere else, I also explore those different sort of options when it comes to personal retreat. So there's some practical sense maybe like we can also touch on during this retreat course. But I think most importantly, as a household yogi, how do we then bring this retreat or practice energy into our daily life circumstances? Right now, in my reflecting on my own, life circumstances, I was so fortunate. There's a period in my life where I could really dedicate, at times like months into personal retreat. That's actually in the past for me right now. I now don't have that luxury, and I have, full-time work, and I don't have the time to even go off doing personal retreat, longer than 2 weeks at times. So, working with my mentors they really taught me something, which is like, now your work becomes a retreat. So that is something that I think we are all working with, right? Like as a householder yogi, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's something else, that also becomes our retreat from the place of, application, bringing meditative, energy into those circumstances. So hopefully we can touch on all these different components that we are already part of, and really continue to feel inspired to keep on practicing on this path. So I'll hand it over to Lucas, and just really curious about your own journey with personal retreat.
Yeah, thank you, Kasumi. That's so nice to hear you talk about your experience and how you went about it. Yeah, so my experience with retreat was a little bit different. It was not maybe as gradual as Kasumi. I think Kasumi went the smart way into this, So I actually lived in India, Nepal for many years, and I was there when Mingyur Rinpoche went off into retreat as well. So I was there studying. And then I'm from Sweden. I live in Sweden now. So then I went back to Sweden, and for a few years, when Mingyur Rinpoche was doing his wandering retreats, I also spent quite a lot of time in retreat. So I was about like 6-7 months in retreat each year. Then I was out, and then I went back in. So I didn't do like the, as Mingyur Rinpoche also suggests that you start off and doing like shorter times and prolong it. But I just went straight into it, and yeah, it was not so easy. You can feel very, very inspired going into this, and having all these like great meditators from our lineage or in Buddhism in general, and someone like Mingyur Rinpoche himself. But then when you're in there, it's like, yeah, it's not so easy when you just have yourself and your mind. So and it was a great lesson, like coming out of my first 6 months, or I really felt like a failure. I was like, this was a waste of time. It's like I must be the worst. I must be the worst retreat ever, But then I went back in, I didn't give up. Went back in, felt pretty much the same after second retreat, Uh, but then after like third time around, that's when I started to like, yeah, there's actually something to this, Maybe it wasn't, and then I started to realize, maybe these first two retreats, maybe it wasn't so like just a waste of time either, that actually it had its place, even if I had, like my expectations were up here maybe, when reality was like here, or maybe even lower, But it was great. It was a great learning experience. And as Kasumi said, just looking back at it now, I'm a family person now, and I have kids, and just like even talking about like going back into retreat for that amount of time, or even like now in formal practice is like a challenge, with full-time work and kids and everything that comes with that. I feel so fortunate, just had that time in my life when I was doing that full time and that experience. But with that, so I think like now looking back at that, and then like hearing how Rinpoche goes about this for us as household practitioners, household yogis, that we can do as Kasumi said, we can do weekend retreats. And I think it's like such a beautiful and so down to earth way of approaching this, of being practitioners in this time and in this world now today. So yeah, I truly feel inspired by that we actually can, we don't have to try to become, like these great or leave everything and thinking like that's the only way, but we really like can apply it to our own lives and our own situations, and then bring it back into our lives and how we can apply it in our situations and everyday life. So, and there, like this, I think this course is just beautiful, the teachings here with Rinpoche in this course, and yeah, just how he also had these short videos where he answered specific questions about retreat and how we can go about it. So I think it's a very, very beautiful and down to earth way of how to approach retreat. here now for us.
Thank you, Lucas. I certainly had my own versions of expectations too. Like, oh, if I do this much retreat, then this will happen, or
Yeah.
if this doesn't happen, then I will be a better practitioner. I think we all are working with those expectations too. And one of the things I really appreciate about like carving out the time formally to really dive into a personal retreat is like, of course, we begin to see our habitual patterns and neuroses and things really will come up because, when we start working with our own mind, that definitely is there as clouds. And yet, what I also notice, especially during a personal retreat setting, is that the mind starts to settle, because we will also be in silence. There's just no one else to talk to. We are like every day, every single day, you are with your own mind. So there's an aspect of really seeing all those habits, things that you don't really want to see. You will see it immediately, really vividly. And yet, the retreat container, it's really supportive because, there's like nothing else you can do, but just work with that. And for me, retreat really gave me a chance to, experiment with things I'm already learning from our teachers. We get to really experiment, test it, and see if that works for me, for us. So that with that, I feel like also retreat gives us amazing support and space to really, familiar with who we truly are. And in my case, what I saw over time is, of course, I'm still have patterns and neuroses that I'm working with, but the benefit of retreat is like we really get to know ourselves fully. And in my case, I really am a bit more comfortable in my own skin. It's like I can kind of bring a sense of humor to my own neurosis and monkey mind more than ever in my life. So there is definitely those benefits, not just having those challenging moments in the retreat, but also how we work with that and just transform everything into practice. So, yeah, I'm just curious about, your experience too, Lucas. Like why do we go to personal retreat? What's the benefit there?
Yeah, I can so much relate to what you're saying. And very similarly for me, and that's one of the big takeaways when when thinking back on this time, I have this clear memory because of course we will have all kind of different experiences when we're in retreat and we're more in sort of an intense environment or setting up time to just do that. But for those of you who are more familiar with with Buddhism and Mingyur Rinpoche's teachings and so on, who's been with us a while, like Rinpoche's emphasis is not on the experiences but on awareness, and connected with that. So of course there are times when it's like kind of blissful in retreat, when it's like nice, And then at other times it's like your monkey mind just goes crazy, But yeah, my experience also, like after a while in retreat during those years, I could wake up one morning and it was just like bala 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 yada 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 from the outset, But instead of like trying to fight with that, I could actually start to smile, like physically smile also. I was like, okay, it's one of these days, just be with that, and that's something I experience now as well that has lingered on in my life. It sets something like a plant a seed or whatever we want to call it, that we can like it really helps not always take it so seriously, maybe, if that's for lack of a better word, but it's really what we do, right? We're working with our own minds, and if we can start to have more of that little lighter relationship with that, I found that tremendously beneficial in my own life. And then again, just like trying out different things, like in retreat, I realized after a while that I have just set up like a way too harsh schedule or that I was not like in line where I am, thinking that I could do, like the traditional setup or do 4 sessions a day of like 3 hours each. And it's like, no, that was just like at the time, And then I started to like really question that in retreat, like why am I doing this? Like, is it just like to tick some boxes? So like, yes, now I've been sitting like another 2.5 hours. But it's like, and then it says I started to experiment. Like, what happens if I start to sit 25-minute sessions, but I do it much more often, and see like what happens then if I do that like 12, 15 times a day, instead of 25-minute sessions, what happens then? So it's very like also interesting to just have that time to like play around with your practice, so to speak, and see what works and see what happens and how it affects us. Because it's really that's what I started to feel also. It takes out of this box. It's very easy. I find like we fall into this, like, oh, like ticking off boxes, like our practice becomes another to-do list. It's like, oh, I've done so many prostrations, I've done this many mantras, but it's like, no one cares. It's like, actually, no one cares how many mantras you recite. I mean, there might be someone or some crazy yogi so thinks it's impressive, but otherwise it's like, no, it's like really why are we doing this? And I think also that's one of the benefits of spending time in retreat and doing this, that we really begin to ask ourselves those questions, and sort of can go along with in our practice.
Wonderful. I feel like we can talk about this forever, but I think we can just now open it up to Q&A. What do you think, Luis, Max?
Yes, we have questions already. Let me just share a few of them with you. There's a question asking about what happens to the body sensations during retreats. Does the body become more relaxed?
Okay, I can answer what happens with the body. My experiences are a lot of discomfort, especially in the beginning, if you sit a lot. But I think, I mean, again, I think that's very personal. And again, I come back to what I said before about experiences. These things changes. I have experienced, that you can be in a lot of discomfort or even pain sometimes, and I have had one, especially when I was younger and trying to be like this tough meditator. I would just like sit through everything. It's not so smart, But then I had other moments, if we just talk about experiences, when like, yeah, it's like all these painful sensations goes away. You feel actually very comfortable in your body or blissful and feel like I could sit here for the rest of my life. But again, that's the realm of experiences, and that it changes all the time. So it doesn't really matter so much. But regardless if we feel, like discomfort or pain, or we feel bliss, or we don't feel anything in particular, the underlying thing there is the awareness. The awareness is always present. So if we can come back and connect with that, or recognize that awareness within the body sensations, that's the key. That's what we're training in and practicing in.
Yeah, I love that. Awareness is the key. I think, I think we can also work with our own expectations too. I certainly had my own expectations towards my body during the retreat. And the expectation is such that, oh, I should be able to sit cross-legged for a long time. And that is hard to let go of as a practitioner, right? So it really becomes also a type of practice. How do we then care for our own body while we are actually still doing a personal retreat? And Mingyur Rinpoche's approach is so refreshing in a sense that if you feel, start feeling some discomfort, you have a permission to stand up and go for walking, go up, get up and then do walking meditation. So it's not all about, being in a, one posture all day, every day. But again, how do we work with that? Whether we are walking inside the cabin or house, going back and forth, whether you stretch out, all of that is also part of how we relate to our physical sensations. And again, our awareness is the key. So whether you do formal setting while you are seated, we can even sit on a chair, and, like lean, against the back support. That's totally fine. It's just that what we actually bring into those experiences, as Lucas said, it's the key. So in my own experience, I really began to work with my own expectations. Like, I should be able to do this. But then, like, there's no should here, going back to the essence of meditation. So it's been a really interesting practice when it comes to physical sensations too. Again, it goes up and down as always.
Thank you, guys. We have a lot of questions. We have 28 questions already. So I'm gonna jump to the next one from Helen. Can you say something about the difference between just meditation retreats and retreats like the one coming up online in Kathmandu? That will be a mix of teachings and meditation.
Maybe we can just say that the group retreat is very supportive, of course. If you have the opportunities to go on to a group retreat, that's really fantastic. In a way, the container is held that way. There is a schedule that you follow, whether it's group practice time or Q&A session with the guys, or, some commentary by a Kempo from, in a Tergar community, or whether it's teaching hours with Mingyur Rinpoche, all that is there to support you to really, so that you can really, go deeper into your own practice. So this retreat course here within Vajrayana Online, we are looking at this from a place of personal retreat, like tradition. We will touch on traditional, sort of traditions with that as well. So there's a beautiful tradition in Tibetan Buddhism where masters have gone on like personal retreat. That's really part of the tradition. But here, as we are also householder yogi, we will touch on the idea or how to practical sense of how you can do that, whether it's at home or elsewhere, or how do we even lead into that, as well as how do we then integrate our practice into our daily life. So we are distinguishing between group retreat and then personal retreat. And even within group retreat, there are definitely some similarities. Maybe there is some time that depends on group retreat. There are time to do a silence period within a group retreat, functional silence. So yeah, there's just definitely similarities are there, but we kind of treat it differently.
Thank you, Katsumi. There's a few questions with a similar topic. Basically, how you manage to kind of maintain your practice after the retreat is over, and if it's basically does it last like long-lasting effects, or it's over once you're back to work?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, how should I answer? I mean, I think that like life, of course, as at least my experience, like after a while we get very used to like the new situation and we're in, and we get back into that sort of like rhythm, you know. But with that, just spending time in retreat, I think it also it has some, long-term effect on our practice and how we relate to situations in our lives. That I can see like some like in situations with certain, like maybe it's just like automatically kicks in something like a response that is not so much like conscious effort, but I think it's a result of our practice. And of course, probably many of you who are meditators and been doing it for a while might experience that sometimes just it automatically comes, you know, Rinpoche is from a teaching, he gives the example of awareness being like ringing a bell, and you like, that's your practice, you know, so every time the bell rings, that's like recognizing awareness. And then it says like after a while the bell will start to ring itself, meaning like you will just automatically in your life you just start to rest in awareness without that's like a conscious effort, just you find yourself like being in awareness. So I think that's like the long-term effect of awareness. And whether we are practicing in retreat or we do formal practice at home or we apply short times many times in our daily life, what we are practicing is like, first of all, like recognizing awareness, but then stabilizing this recognition. And all of these different forms, that's really helped doing, stabilizing that recognition and start to happen more frequently, you can say, on its own for naturally longer periods. So I would say like that's like the long-term effect of it. So it's not, you know, like we go into retreat and it's like a sort of personality change, or it changed like all our, you know, world in that way. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucas. Next question is from Ted. Is while in retreat, what routines have worked and not worked for you?
What worked for us and what didn't work for us? Is it the question?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. It's a really good question because I feel like I can really list all the things that I made mistakes. There's like a practical things to more of a, you know, what I was creating in my mind sense. So maybe this is something that we can touch on during this retreat course more in depth. I'll just kind of talk about like practical aspect one first, which is, let's see, please plan well. Because if you don't plan well, you might end up, you know, running out of food. You might end up having to still work while you are on retreat, you know, or communicate, do some communications that seem so necessary, right? So anyway, I feel like in a way, retreat starts way before you actually arrive at the retreat, personal retreat. So like planning aspect is definitely one that, you know, comes to my mind. And there are things that I did wrong, and maybe we can talk about that more. In terms of how I actually, you know, sort of relate to retreat, I think having high expectations becomes such a challenging thing to work with. We all have certain hopes and expectations, and of course, it's natural, right? Because it all comes from our own inspiration, and yet holding on to that so tightly, which I really did, becomes a sort of like struggle within a retreat setting. So I can really talk about a lot more things that I have done and went wrong, but these are the things that come to my mind. Yeah.
Thank you, Katsumi. We have a few questions also, family members and loved ones, and how you communicate with them that you're going to retreat. Kay asked you if you can share your experience with this, how to step away from loved ones for this period.
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I think it's and this, of course, this can be personal also depending on your situation and your relationships. Like, well, I guess like if you have younger kids, you probably don't go into like longer retreats, you know, because they're dependent on you. And I didn't when I was in retreat, you know, I didn't have family, so on. But and of course, it's a different thing if your kids are adults or grown-ups, you know. But so I have my parents, you know, family. Personally, when I was in these long retreats for like 7 months, I sent like a text message every now and then, like every maybe, you know, second month or something like that. Just like saying I'm okay, you know. Yeah, something like that. So I think it's, yeah, it's very, you know, it's personal depending on your situation, on what you, I mean, yeah, what you have to do, you know, and what is also maybe like, you can say, kind to others. Of course, there is this, also, I'm not going to have any contact whatsoever. But of course, depending on your relationship, it might also be kinder to just be like, okay, of course, I can send a text message every now and then just saying I'm okay, to keep others, you know, yeah, comfortable also in that situation.
Thank you, Lucas. I have an interesting question from Virginia. She's saying she has a pet, and if she's going to retreat, is necessary to send the pet away, or is it okay to keep it during the retreat?
Maybe I'll just share one. Someone I met, in my personal retreat environment, I often rent a, cabin in the mountain, in the Rocky Mountain in Colorado. And I think at that time I was on a 3-month retreat. And one time the lightning hit the ground and it started like natural fire. So we all received a text from a caretaker, beloved Lama An, and we all had to like evacuate from our personal retreat cabins. And what that led me to is to meet a lifelong retreatant. Basically, this person is doing a personal retreat for the rest of her life. And I met her along with her pet. It was like a little cute bird in a bird cage. And she said to me that how, this little bird is giving her a moment of mindfulness as she's feeding her. She really needs to be careful. So she really incorporated that as, her pet, a little bird, as a part of her own personal retreat and practice. So I thought that was really beautiful. Just wanted to share that. Anyway, after one night, we were able to go back to a personal retreat cabin, so it was all good. But I actually thought, of course, it was disruptive at time, but I really felt like so much more inspiration by meeting other retreatants, and also just a way to kind of incorporate that into my own personal retreat at that time.
Amazing. Thank you, Kazumi. We have a question regarding the course content and structure. Will you talk about long structure retreats only, or also about weekend retreats we can do at home on our own?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so we will cover all these different types of retreats. So what we're doing now, like having these Q&A sessions, we will have that also in the course. So we will have weekly practice sessions, and then we'll have bi-weekly, what we call heart-to-hearts, where we'll just gather in not a webinar, what do you call, like a meeting, so we can all see each other, and we can just share our experience with our practice and ask questions, and Kazumi and I will be there. So yeah, so we can talk about all these aspects of retreat or practice.
Thank you, Lucas. We have a question. Dear Kazumi and Lucas, I'm curious to know your experiences about how to handle and transform mental dullness during the retreat. Thank you.
Oh, this is a great topic, isn't it, Lucas? This will come up, as we see. I also see that in my daily practice too. And you would certainly see that during a personal retreat. I think it's really like teaching, it's the same, what we actually do with that. As Mingyur Rinpoche says, dullness is, one of the 2 types of down meditation experiences, right? Like one is agitation, where the thoughts are really going really speedy, coming up a lot. One is dullness, just feels like just like a heaviness in your mind. So both cases, it's really natural and common. It really happens. It happens to everyone too. So the question is, what do we do with that? it's really not a judgment on you being a bad practitioner in any way. It's just like one of the clouds that come up in our own meditation practice. So as you know, we touched on this, it's really all about awareness. As long as you know you're experiencing dullness, you are already in meditation. And how much that, you know, instruction really encouraged me over time, it's just like, wow, it's really speechless. You know, it's really amazing how Mingyur Rinpoche's approach and this view is like, it's, you know, everything. It's a support for our practice. And yeah, so dullness is certainly something that we all will see. And again, it's not the bad sign, it's actually a good sign, Rinpoche says. So I think it's really part of our own, you know, experience on the retreat. Lucas, have you seen dullness? Have you worked with that?
Never have. Not agitation either, neither of them. Yes, it certainly does happen, as Kasumi said. You know, and it's there's also this dullness, right, that goes over to like tiredness, almost like, you know, falling asleep. And I heard someone asking Rinpoche that question, you know, like, what do I do in retreat when it's just like, yeah, this dullness comes and it continue to come, and I just like, I'm very, very tired, you know. And it's like Rinpoche's answer was just amazing. And it's like, well, maybe you need to sleep. Why don't you just take a nap? And it's just, of course, you know, it's so down to earth, but it's just like also this, of course, just getting someone like Mingyur Rinpoche who's like probably one, if not the, you know, greatest yogi alive, you know, that can just saying that or give him permission, so to speak, of saying that you can take a nap, it's okay, you know. And then it's the other side. I always find I find that more difficult when I'm on my own, just to like fall, you know, like nod off in practice. Because I often, like when I get to that stage, I'm like, I'm just gonna lie down, you know, this is too much. But I found like if I sit like in a more say like a teaching session with Rinpoche or at the retreats, which has happened, I think it's just amazing. When you just start feeling that nodding off, it's like I can't lie down here. I just have to go with this, you know. And there's something to that, like Kasumi said, that we can try to make that our practice as well in that moment, you know, to like recognize the awareness with that, with the dullness. So I think it's a great opportunity when that happens to continue to apply our practice and recognize awareness in all these different moments and situations.
Dullness meditation and sleepiness meditation, all the meditation, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Maybe we have a time for one last question because of time. But so we have a question regarding how do we know when we are ready for relatively like a longer retreat?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we ever will know in that sense. I think we just have to try, you know, and not also be afraid of trying. You know, as I explained, like I felt like a failure coming out of retreat, but later on I could see like, no, it wasn't actually just a waste of time. It was great. So I think there's something to that, just like testing and see. There is this in the tradition, it says something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but you know, just taking 7 steps in the direction of retreat is more meritorious than offering, you know, like the universe to all the Buddhas or the 3 times and 10 directions, you know, something like that. So just having that intention even to go on retreat is like, it's amazing, you know. So I think we should just, you know, try, but of course we don't have to be careless, you know, and just like jumping out of our head, you know. But if we can, like setting it up in that way to start doing weekend retreats, or maybe a week or a day retreat, and like weekends, and maybe a little bit longer, and group retreats, as Kasumi mentioned before. And then we just feel ready, like now I can try to do a personal retreat for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I love that approach of like gradually testing and then just like experimenting aspect. You know, in my own experience, I actually only did like a day as a daily practice first. So I was practicing on a daily basis. And then I, you know, so sort of did it at home. It was like half day at home in a, in a comfortable space. Half day became one day, one day became weekend, weekend became longer weekend. Longer weekend became a week. And I also started exploring going to some other places too, outside my home environment. And all of that, I think what was important for me is not to set myself up to failure, but really work within my own capacity. And I also listen to my own inspiration. Like there's like an inspiration that really bubble up. In my case, at the end of retreat, I'm like, oh, I want to actually do it again. And so make sure you end your retreat in a good note, not feeling like, oh gosh, finally retreat is over and I don't know if I want to do this again. That means you actually did a little bit too much, So same thing as a daily practice too, right? We often say just, if you think you can do 20 minutes of meditation and in about 17, 18 minutes, just end in a good note. And I think we can really say the same for personal retreat too. Again, as Lucas reminded us, short times, many times, it's really, really beautiful. And we can really keep also our retreat fresh in a sense that we really continue to have inspiration. So I think that one thing is like, listen to your own inspiration and also, explore and talk to others who have done, their, group retreats and personal retreats. And there are always, wonderful practical tips and inspiration that come from talking to others as well.
Thank you, Kasumi. I just have one final question because this one I think it's interesting for everyone. I'm gonna read it. I have experienced doing retreats in group or on my own, but usually in a very inspiring environment like a Sura Cave or Nagi Gompa, with all the Dharma practitioners just around. But my experience with doing it alone in my home is small. It's like a big, huge difficulty for me to make it happen. So many things grab me that I have to do and so on. Any advice on how to set up a personal retreat in my home?
I would say one thing I discovered in my own exploration, whether I do it at home or elsewhere, or those like sacred places like Nagigompa and other places, actually home is maybe the most challenging place, challenging environment to do a personal retreat, because even in my own experience, there are so many distractions in our home, I must say. Oh, I want to clean here. I need to organize this closet. I mean, there's like a number of to-do lists that come up in my mind when I do it at home. Oh, I need to really contact this person, respond in this email. So we actually will talk about that in this course too, how to create external like boundary. We talk about outer boundary, and traditionally speaking, it actually really helps me a lot to create outer boundary so that we can really focus on retreat itself. So here we talk about letting go of work, letting go of certain obligations or work, and stay in silence, or all those things, really all those boundaries that we pay attention to really become helpful tips when it comes to home retreat. But of course, we do our best, right? So in my own case, I communicate to family members, I'll be doing half the retreat at home at this date. And so, of course, we do our best. And then during the break, I might have to even do functional silence. I would probably need to talk to my family members if something comes up, and just be okay with that. So I think the key is to really list how you want to set up the boundary, or whether it's strict boundary or a bit more looser boundary, and just be okay with what you have set up, that the beginning, and then you carry on. So these are all trial and error and figuring out what works best. But yes, home retreat probably is the most challenging work environment, retreat environment. Lucas, what do you think? Yeah, I would love to hear about your experiences with that too.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. To be honest, I haven't done much home retreat because yes, it feels just like very, very challenging to be able to do it in that way, you know. But of course, even if you have, or if you're like me, that you have kids, I think that expectation of like, oh, I should be alone here might be too high. You know, maybe you just have to have that in your retreat plan that your kid's gonna run in from time to time, you know, during your practice also, like what your son is like, hey, dad, you know, it's like, so yeah, again, we just have to come back to our own life and our own situation and like work with that instead of like always think like always like it has to be this way or otherwise it doesn't go. It's just like we do our best in the situations we're in and like to keep that joyfulness, you know, with in the situation we are. Yeah, that's what I would think.
I think we should talk about retreat course now.
Yeah, we have a few minutes, so maybe just do it very quickly. So actually, the retreat course, it's for all of you who are Vajrayana Online members. It's available among our courses. You'll find it there in our course archive. For all of you who are not Vajrayana Online members, we invite you to become subscribers. You get a 10-day free trial, so you can try out and see the courses. But what we did, we launched this course a few years back, first time. So what we're doing now, as I said, it's already there, but what we're adding now is like this live components. So we will have weekly practice sessions. We will have the heart-to-hearts where we come together as a community and talk about our practice and retreat. I can ask all our questions and share reflections and experiences. So that's what we're gonna do for the next 3 months together. And Kasumi and I will be your guides for this course. So the course exists of three modules, so basically 3 months. So in there we will have teachings by Mingyur Rinpoche. We will hear from other great lineage figures that done a lot of practice and so on. There are there are interviews with Matthieu, Ricard and Jetsunma, Tenzin, Palmo and others in there. So there's a lot of material and a lot to take away. And one thing I actually mentioned before, but that I really like about this course is that there are these small videos with Rinpoche where he gets like a specific question that he answers in relationship to retreat, which are just beautiful, I think. So yeah, so that's a little bit about the overall structure of the course.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you, Lucas. And in module 1, it's really all about the benefit of retreats. We touched on this topic already, but we will really, go deeper into that. And 1, 2, 3, 4 actually refers to sections. So first section, you will receive introduction and welcome from Mingyur Rinpoche and guides. And we'll kind of go into various aspects of retreat and how beneficial it is, and this why aspect. Yeah. And module 2, Lucas?
Yeah, so in module 2, we having looked at that in the first module, the benefits, we actually start to look at how do we actually practice in retreat. So as you can see by the titles here in the sections, we will just approach it from these different angles. We get tips from Mingyur Rinpoche, what he's done in his own retreats. Kasumi, we both talked about that, especially Kasumi. There's a lot about the expectations of retreats and how we deal with that once we're in, how we can keep our schedule on track, and then like the fourth one, retreat is not an escape. I think that question came up a little bit, what happens after retreat and so on. So yeah, we'll touch on all of these different aspects. And again, we have the live sessions. So when we do watch the teachings and read and so on, then we can bring all our questions and reflections to these live sessions also and share with each other.
The module 3, the challenges of retreat. I think this is something I really found so helpful to really normalize, whatever challenges that come up in our, retreat setting. It could be doubts, it could be, certain hope and fear that are, come up in our minds, as well as, in terms of subtle body aspect, the energy movement. So we'll kind of talk about both from a mind and also subtle body aspect. And then, so that we can also really, discuss and just kind of, learn how to work with those challenges. I think, again, this is really normal and common. And I feel so fortunate that Mingyur Rinpoche is really sharing those, teachings and giving us ways to work with that.
Yes. Yeah, so there you see a picture of Kasumi and I. So I think we mentioned this. It's a little bit what the course, the contents of it, but yes, we have the teachings with Rinpoche and guest speakers with interviews and so on. So yeah, I guess just welcome you all to join us. I'm really looking forward to this period together and leading it here together with you, Kasumi. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun and exploring this together.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Kasumi. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you everyone for being here. And yeah, we are on the top of the hour. We had like amazing questions, so I thought it was great to extend a little bit of the questions because they were just kept coming. And yeah, see you March 15 on the retreat course. It's available on Vajrayana Online with other, of course, 20 other courses available there. So if you're not there yet, please join. It's highly recommended. So yeah, thank you everyone. See you there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Max, behind the scene.
Yeah, thanks everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.